for national security exigencies. I emphasize on that BNC Communications Bureau because what he says here, it's different from what the Attorney General says it is and how it is being represented on the charge sheet. But let's look at the expenditure as he details, or what he calls the summary.
Sure.
1, special operations, and that was for Turas, Scorpion, ACN 1 and 2, and an amount of 9.5 million Ghana cedis spent in the year 2020, and the justification for the expenditure was for special operations, that's payment towards special cyber and electronic surveillance solutions. And this money was received by ISC Holding. ISC Holding. If you recall, it is the company that he's been alleged to have been involved in that transaction, part of which he's been accused of stealing and then causing financial loss and all the other charges. Expenditure number 2, Operation Conquered Fist. This was a counterterrorism special operation. The amount involved is 6.9 million Ghana cedis. The expenditure year was 2020-2024, and the justification was for the stability of the nation, counter-terrorism / extremism, received by various personnel and activities. 3, Operation Calm Life. That was an anti-kidnapping / violent crimes. In respect of this, an amount of 3.7 million Ghana cedis was expended, ranging between 2020 and 2024. The justification was for stability of the nation and counter-violent crimes, also received by various personnel and activities. 4, Parliamentary, into bracket, Special Enactment of National Signals Bureau Act 2020. An amount of 960,000 Ghana cedis was expended between the years of 2020 and 2021, and the justification was for MP's allowance, received by Defense and Interior Committee. Item 5, Parliamentary, also in respect of enactment of National Signals Bureau LI, an amount of 309,000 Ghana cedis was expended in the year 2024, and for MP's allowances, this was received by the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. Item 6 is Elections Special Operations, Allowance and Logistics. An amount of 7.2 million Ghana cedis was expended in December 2020, and it was for the stability of the nation and for peaceful polling, various personnel and activities. Also in respect of elections is item 7, where you have Elections Special Operations, Allowance and Logistics. Another 6.7 million Ghana cedis expended in December 2024, and that was also for stability of the nation and peaceful polling, received by various personnel and activities. Item 8, Elections Operations, Support for Opposition Party, into brackets, Communication Equipment for Election Results Collation. An amount of 8.3 million Ghana cedis, an equivalent of $500,000, was expended in September 2020. Let me finish. It was for stability of the nation, national cohesion, political impartiality, and this was received by classified. This was received by classified. You would notice that in all the other expenditure, I indicated who got it.
Received it.
In some instances, it just indicates various personnel.
Absolutely.
This, they say classified.
So let's stay on that particular expenditure item, because you see, just for the benefit of our listeners, this was ahead of the 2020 elections.
Yes, September 2024.
Good. And he says that this $500,000 was paid, according to him, based on the details of this document.
Yes.
Paid to opposition political party. He didn't name the opposition political party because there are a number of...
No, it's not parties.
Party.
Yes.
I'm saying there are a number of opposition political parties.
Yes, okay.
In the country.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
That was prior to the elections.
Precisely so.
And so if you talk about 500,000 paid to an opposition political party.
$500,000
paid to an opposition political party.
Yes, CD equivalent is 8.3 million Ghana cedis.
And he fails to mention that and says classified.
It's classified.
Why is that classified?
National security.
Paying an opposition political party?
No, so...
Or giving them the money to
the
buy...
one who received the money...
Election, monitoring?
He chose to classify or to hide the identity of the person who received the money. But the other details are there. The amount in question, what it was meant for, the time it was given.
No, let's get that. What was it meant for again?
It was meant for stability of the nation, national cohesion, political impartiality. Yes, those are indicated as being the justification for that amount of money.
Paying $500,000.
Yes, and the item is labeled election. No, sorry, the item is labeled election special operations, support for opposition party, into brackets, communications equipment for election results collation.
Communication equipment.
Yes, for election results collation. And this is support for opposition party. It doesn't end there. Number 9, also election special operations. This is in respect of logistics, into brackets, vehicles. That's 2024 Nissan Patrol Platinum, 2024 Nissan Patrol Platinum, 2022 Land Cruiser GXR, and the amount involved is 5.1 million Ghana cedis. The time, December 2024. This again was for stability of nation, national cohesion, political impartiality. This was paid to special aid to president-elect. I take that again.
Let's repeat that. Mm-hmm.
This was an expenditure he says occurred in December 2024. The amount involved is 5.1 million Ghana cedis. The item is labeled election special operations in respect of logistics. They specify the logistics to include vehicles, and the vehicles, 2024 Nissan Patrol Platinum, 2024 Nissan Patrol Titanium, then 2022 Land Cruiser GXR, and then this was received by special aid to president-elect.
So, I mean, if what he says is anything but in the face of this document, president-elect at the end of the election 2024, we do know is the president of the Republic of Ghana now.
Yes, so his special aid is the one who is said to have received this amount of money.
According to Adu Boahene.
According to Adu Boahene, who is writing from the custody of EOCO. And he's doing so because he wants to set the record straight. He thinks that the matters that are before the court for which he's been tried are misconceived. And he says that even though he tried not to disclose a lot of the information because he thinks they are national security operations, under the circumstances he's afraid he has to do what he has to do. And this is why we have this information. There's a very last item, which is human security operations. And this, they indicate generators. An amount of 520,000 Ghana cedis was expended in 2024, and this was for human security intervention. That was received by the National Security Coordinator. Now, after this, he goes on to say, I give you my highest assurances that Angela and I would never steal public funds, as is being deliberately and wickedly portrayed by the Attorney General. In any case, how does one steal public funds in the manner being described by the Attorney General without being flagged by the Auditor General? Further, I give you my highest assurances that Angela and I would never take what does not belong to us, even if privately arranged. We are full of content with the most blessings of God, with the modest blessings God has given us. What is evidently clear is that the EOCO boss, Raymond Archer, is deliberately misrepresenting or distorting the facts to the authorities, and in the process causing unnecessary sensation that could embarrass the government and the national security. And I am craving your urgent intervention to avert it before it becomes too late. So this was the memo that was written by Adu Boahene to the National Security Coordinator. This letter was again taken by his counsel and attached to a letter that he's written to the National Security Coordinator together with the charge sheet to make the case that, yes, these are the matters that have come to our attention. I mean, it's not what you say it is.
Absolutely.
Take a second look at it and let's proceed from there.
No, stay with me, Dennis, because we would have to run through some specific aspects of this memo you've just written. Quite explosive, yes, to say the least.
In relation
but then again,
to the charge sheets.
The charge sheet specifically. And Christian Malm-Hesse is private legal practitioner joining us. And I thank you very much, and counsel, for joining us here on Hot Edition. And the prayer is quite clearly that Kwabena Adu Boahene is taking this route of putting out this memo written to the national security in the public domain to also directly respond to the press conferences addressed by the Attorney General, giving updates on his case specifically. But how far-reaching will this be?
Thank you for having me. Could you just mention the salient points for me, because I have to pack so to tune into you.
And in fact, Dennis will do that, but the sticky points in there, I mean, even before we get into the details of it, he's talking about some monies paid to members of parliament on a particular committee by national security, okay. And then also some 5.1 million cedis paid to the aid to the president-elect after the 2024 elections, 500,000 cedis, election results, coalition equipment, he says, was given to the opposition party, $500,000 for them to purchase. All of this, and that's what I'm saying, how putting out this in the public domain at a time when this particular trial is about starting, because he is in the coolest of Iyoko. How far-reaching will this be?
So, this is just by way of education purposes. Number one, there are two main submissions I want to put out on this by way of education. The first part is that because Attorney General started this whole public enterprise, that is what has also motivated him to also do same, so that stereotypes will be formed in the minds of the public. So it is both parties are trying to win the mind of the public, or to court public sympathy, rather than just basing everything in the courtroom, which is quite unfortunate. And I made my position clear last week, Saturday, on this point. Number two, to say that given the allegations, and they remain allegations, but if it is anything to go by in respect of the allegations, where an allegation of stealing or any criminal enterprise is alleged against Mr. A, and Mr. A happened to give proceeds of the proceeds from the third enterprise to third parties, we call it dishonest receiving. Now, to prove dishonest receiving, it is one that the court will be very critical to know the intention of the party that received it, whether indeed the party that received it was aware, or at the time of receiving it became aware, or thereupon became aware that the monies that had been advanced to me came from a certain illicit enterprise. And we call that mens rea. And the court will base proving this a lot on what we again call circumstantial evidence. So, again, by way of education, when we say circumstantial evidence, it is not direct evidence. So direct evidence is when the person is caught hands-on. So this is the evidence that we say it concludes culpably to Mr. A, connecting Mr. A to the offense. But when we come to circumstantial evidence, we connect the nodes of evidence and to come to a conclusion that when we connect node A, node B, node C, it all leads to the conclusion of D to say that indeed this is the evidence pointing out that the circumstantial evidence is established. So this basically comes under Section 147 of the Criminal Offences Act 1960.
Right.
That deals with dishonest receiving of property, and like I said, it must be with knowledge that it was obtained criminally. And so, I mean, I am not saying that this is the situation, but given the scenario, the letter, and the posture put out there in the content of the letter, please suggest that monies were given out to other persons. If it can be established that those other persons were acquiesced by knowledge, then this particular case is far from over.
Well, but in the midst of all of this, he has to prove beyond reasonable doubt in a court of competent jurisdiction that what he's put in this memo is indeed the truth, is it not? And that's beyond whatever we're going to discuss in the public domain. The law, yes, the rule of the game in the court is evidence, is it not?
Yes, the rule of the game is evidence. So if you are a CID and you arrest Mr. A, and Mr. A tells you that you arrest him based upon investigation, and Mr. A tells you that, let's say, the 20,000 CDs that you are investigating me of, I gave it to Madam A, I gave some to Madam A, I gave some to Madam B and Madam Mr. C. You have to bring all those parties in, investigate them, see whether what the person is saying is true, because they are emanating from the enterprise of investigation. And if indeed those persons fall within that offense of net, then the charge sheet will be amended to put further people into the whole equation. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to push the limits of persons possibly culpable in this to become a wider enterprise. But again, it is for the prosecution and as it is, Attorney General, to see what they want to do with this piece of evidence that has come forth, and whether they want to widen the scope and come under dishonest receiving. But this is only to educate the public on what dishonest receiving is, because the memo put out there in the sticky part in law comes under this area of law, being section 146.
And I do indeed, and I do appreciate your time, and then also acknowledging the limitation of, as it were, getting into a full-blown analysis of this particular memo, because yes, it has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt in court, and it has to, from what we do know now, this is a document that will be adduced in court as part of the argument by Kwabena Adu Boahene's lawyers, because Samuel Atachia wrote a letter, the cover letter on this memo, attached to the memo, to the National Security Coordinator. He is the recipient of this particular one as well, and clearly, because this is an inter-security investigation, it goes without saying that the National Security Coordinator will definitely robbing the Economic and Organized Crime Office boss as well into looking into this.
Yes, it is a very critical pointer in the case. And for all you know, the lawyers involved in it, they have a strategy. So we cannot go into what strategies they have or how the court tends to run it. But as the matters come up, we can only give education, and that is where the bar can stop for us.
And I do appreciate your time on this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Christian Malm-Hesse is private legal practitioner there. And then, as I indicated, so you look at the recipient of the letter and the memo, that's the National Security Coordinator.
Yeah.
As we speak, Kwabena Adu Boahene is in the custody of the Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO.
Yes.
They are also a national security body involved in the investigation in this particular case.
Yeah.
So you definitely would have some coordination and some sharing of information as we have it now.
Yes.
And obviously, it's going to be a matter of interest, but it is incumbent on Kwabena Adu Boahene and his lawyers to prove this in court, is it not?
It's rather on the prosecution to prove their case against them. So essentially, the state is saying that he's done A, B, C, D. So what they're only seeking to do is to put out information to the effect that, yes, at this point, even though you are doing investigation, I am guiding you as to how to cover the investigation. Perhaps there are things that you're overlooking. But of course, they've already been charged. So if there's anything that they can do with this one, it will form part of the evidence that they will use to exculpate themselves. But as it stands now, there's burden on the state to prove that indeed all the charges that have been leveled against them are proven, and not just proven, but proven beyond reasonable doubt, if they must be convicted of the offenses that they are charged of.
But we're going to get into the specific charges and how it relates to what we're learning now. The companies ISC Holding and BNC, because in the words of the Attorney General Cole, during that press conference, he indicated that the BNC Limited, that was Kwabena Adu Boahene's private company, which was said to be receiving the said monies, mimicked the initials of the Bureau of National Communications. That's the state agency.
That's right.
What else is he saying in there?
Yes, so when you read the letter that Adu Boahene himself has written, he did indicate, or he mentions that, yes, there indeed was an account that had the name BNC Communications Bureau. And he contends that that was an authorized account that was created, and it was created for a certain purpose. Except he did not go on to mention some of the things that the Attorney General had said, and some of the things for which reason the Attorney General had charged him, to say that there was another account which also had a similar name. Recall that when the Attorney General had a press conference, in order to distinguish between the two, he decided to label one private and one national. So that the national one will be the one that was sanctioned by the national security for its operations, and the other one, which he says was owned by the former National Signals Bureau Director General and then the wife. So when you look at it critically, yes, there seemed to be some agreement on some of the facts that have been put out there. Yes, indeed, there was that account for certain purposes, except to say that the transactions that have been alleged to have taken place on certain accounts is what is in dispute now. And that's also the same thing that applies to the issue of the ISC holding. Because when you look at the expenditure disbursement or the summary that we have read, the first item, which has to do with special operations, and that has to do with some things that we've mentioned, which I guess are softwares, Tyro, Scorpion, ACN 1 and 2, Hive. They say that the justification was for special operations, and that was payment towards special cyber and electronic surveillance solutions. The amount that was paid in that account is 9.5 million Ghana cedis. That was paid to the ISC holding. But when you look at the charge sheet, so for instance, on the offense of stealing, the particulars of the offense is to the effect that Kwabena Adu Boahene, and this was somewhere in February 2020 in Accra and within the jurisdiction of this court, under the guise of procuring cyber defense system for the Republic of Ghana from ISC Holding Limited, dishonestly appropriated the sum of about 27,100,000 Ghana cedis belonging to the state with the intention of depriving. So this money, according to the Attorney General, and as contained in the charge sheet, it's money that was paid into the account of ISC Holdings. However, when you look at what he is saying here, the amount that was paid in here was just 9.5 million Ghana cedis.
I see, but then again,
but you see,
the AG indicates that yes, the money is the first installment was paid, but then subsequently.
But even this one, as has been stated here, 27 million, is far more than the 9 million that has been stated here.
That's in dollars, so at the prevailing rate, that if you do the multiplication, you get it.
No, so the figures that have been provided for here are in cedis, because he seeks to account for the 49 million Ghana cedis, which is said to be the reason for which is in court. So when we just did a quick calculation of what he has given out by way of a summary of the expenditure, you get somewhere 44 million. I don't know why there's a shortfall, but perhaps it could be. No, I don't want to even speak for that, but just to put on record that it's around 44 million Ghana cedis. That is an attempt to justify the 49 million, which is said to have been stolen. So the point I'm saying, which is worth observing, is the fact that the only money that he says has been paid to this ISC holding is 9.5 million Ghana cedis. But even in respect of the charge of stealing alone, as is shown on the face of the charge sheet, the amount involved is 27 1.1 million Ghana cedis. There's a vast difference.
Indeed.
That's the whole point I'm making it with this one.
And it's a very, very important sticky point.
The other expenditures that have been contained in this one, you don't find them. I mean, the Attorney General does not even talk about them. So that's how come we don't even see anything about payment to opposition party, Operation Calm Life and buying of things. And no, we don't see all of that. So, I mean, these are matters that will be dealt with appropriately when they approach the right forum. He's back in court on May 13. And, I mean, the court, as indicated on the last agenda, was the fact that when they come back, the court will direct as to how the case will proceed. But, of course, if they go to a point where there has to be the filing of disclosures, where it basically means that the Attorney General will have to furnish him with all the documents and all the evidence that they will use to prosecute him, including evidence that would potentially get him out of trouble. So if there's any evidence that would prove his innocence, the Attorney General is obliged under law to also add that as part of the disclosures.
No surprises.
Not at all.
We've come far with criminal disclosures, isn't it?
Yes, very, very, very. I mean, it's one of the things that have actually revolutionized the criminal justice system. So that if you are being prosecuted and the state has evidence that show that you are innocent, they are under obligation to give you that evidence. I mean, how easy could that be?
Thanks to the likes of Martin Kpebu and Eduji Tamaklo and others.
So this is to Eduji Tamaklo because the case of Bafo Boni, he was the lawyer in there. So,
well, let's recall exactly what the Attorney General said in that last press conference about Kwabena Adu Boahene and what we're hearing now in this memo from him.
BNC Communications Bureau Limited to Ghana Water, which religiously paid for the internet services. In other words, every 2 weeks when 650,000 Ghana cedis of money from Ghana Water left the bank accounts of Ghana Water, going to the National Signals Bureau account. It went to the account of a company known as Bureau of National Communications, owned by Kwabena Adu Boahene and his wife, okay? And then they did what they wanted to do with the money.
That's the Attorney General there. So Dennis, quickly, so May 13, that's next week Tuesday. All things being equal, is the date to watch.
Yes,
in this case going forward.
Yes, that's next week Tuesday, May 13. Yes,
perfect.
And I mean that was even with some opposition from the counsel for the accused person, thinking that even though the court granted 7 working days of him being in custody, it translated into 11 days. That's because of the weekends.
That's right.
So counsel actually pleaded with the court to see if they could dispense with the working days so that it could just be 7 days, by which, I mean, he would have been due to appear in court on Wednesday, today or tomorrow. But that did not find favor. And this again was on the strength of Martin Kpebu, because the calculation of the 48-hour rule that was ruled by the Supreme Court now has to include public holidays and even weekends. So that was the case that the learned attaché tried to use to persuade the court. But unfortunately, because the Attorney General had indicated that they needed to engage external persons, some of whom may not be available over the weekends, the court had to stick to the working days. And now he has to be in custody for 11 days rather than the 7 days. I mean, 7 working days translating to 11 days.
Good stuff.
So May 13, we are back in court, see how the case progressed.
Thank you. Denis Pwaberi.